Yo, Ikken here. Otherwise known as Tyler. Internet musician extraordinaire, up and coming, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Uh, so this is my second channel, Ikken Hissatsu, because it's shit. We'll just throw that out there. This is just, it's going to be a channel for me to just do whatever I want, you know? If I have other things that I want to upload or talk about or whatever, it'll be here. So, in this episode, I want to talk about, one of my friends brought up, like, as a musician, what were my inspirations or my favorite bands growing up, or whatever got me into music. And I thought that, you know, that's not a bad idea. So I have a giant list here, and I'm going to go over it all. So, to start off with, I originally was a guitarist growing up for the longest time. I was focused primarily on guitar, and I didn't do a whole lot else. But we'll get into that later. What I actually want to talk about first is bands. We'll talk about instruments later. So, growing up, I listened to a lot of rock and metal from my dad, actually. So growing up, some of my dad's favorite band was AC/DC. AC/DC, Metallica, Megadeth, you know, the classics, the good ones. So that's a lot of what I listened to growing up, which is probably what got me more into the heavier style of music as I started discovering heavier music. Eventually, down the road, as I kept listening to, you know, Metallica, Megadeth, Disturbed, bands like that, I was hanging out with a few friends one day, and we came across Suicide Silence, which at the time wasn't really for me. It didn't quite hit me at that point how good they actually were. But what really got me into the heavier metal genre was Whitechapel. One of the first songs I ever heard by them was Fairy Fae, which, it's heavy. It's brutal, especially for, well, I can't say especially for Whitechapel, because a lot of their early stuff was that heavy. Some of their more modern stuff is more melodic, but still pretty fucking brutal. But if you haven't listened to Fairy Fae, go listen to it. I love that song. It's just so good. And it really showcases Phil Bozeman's ability to do the super low growls that just hit. And ever since I learned about Whitechapel, Phil Bozeman has been 100% my main vocal inspiration. When I started learning how to do the metal vocals, his songs were some of the ones that I tried to mimic, I guess, to get me into being able to do that style of vocals. It was, honestly, at the time, it was exactly what I wanted. His range and his ability to do vocals, especially more modern, is just so good. And what I think I really like about it is he doesn't rely on the more airy, the more screamy type of vocals. He incorporates the actual growls, like the actual vibrating stuff, not just the raspy stuff. I don't know how to explain it very well, but if you know, you know. And those low growls are what I practiced the most and what I ended up being the best at. Also, I'm not warmed up, so I'm not going to be able to pull it off very well. Just saying. But that's really what started getting me into the more death metal-y kind of music. And from there, we would explore different bands and different kinds of music. So like I mentioned, Suicide Silence, there was Whitechapel, there was All Shall Perish, which we'll get into later. Just a bunch of different bands. There was, oh god, I can't even remember that other band. Anyway, but what really got me was finding Attila with their song Soda in the Water Cup. You know, you told me you cared, but I don't care about you. I'm not going to do it now. That song kind of blew me away because of Franz and his ability to do his rap screaming. which I still can't even do that part normally. I'm in every fucking city, touching every fucking titty, blah, 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 blah. I can't do it. My buddy can. I can't. It's crazy. But that got me into wanting to be able to do fast vocals. And I started practicing fast rap songs like Rap God by Eminem.
Sumalama Dumalama, you assuming I'm a human. What I gotta do to get it through to you? I'm superhuman, innovative, I made a rubber so that anything you say is ricocheting off of me and glued you. I'm devastating more than ever, demonstrating how to give a motherfucker an audience a feeling like it's levitating.
Look at Me Now. Eventually, Godzilla, obviously by Eminem. Just fast rap songs. And that helped me with my enunciation, which I still struggle at because I have a weird shaped mouth and I've got chubby cheeks, and I've been told when I'm singing it sounds like I'm smiling. I'm not. I sound weird. I acknowledge it. But that really got me into, especially the way Franz was able to do his mid vocals is what we're calling them. So it's not the low growls, it's not the high pitched, but it's the mid. That ended up being my specialty for a while until I got better at my low growls. And then from there, that I also started getting more into the melodic stuff, like I mentioned about Whitechapel, and more recently they're getting a little bit more melodic, which isn't bad. It's good. I love it. But speaking of melodic, Amon Amarth, they're oh man, when I found them, they're Viking metal is what they're described as, and when I found them, it just resonated so hard with me. The melody, the melodics, the all the words that I don't know how to say or I don't know what they are off the top of my head. It's so good. Like, go listen to Cry of the Blackbirds, go listen to Twilight of the Thunder God, go listen to most of their songs. It's so good, and his vocals are so growly. I don't know how else to describe it. But that's why I did an Amon Amarth cover, because I love the melody that they can pull off in their songs, and I love that style of vocals. And I feel like I did an alright job for not actually being able to pull off that style, but I did pretty alright, I think. That really got me into more of the rhythm of a song, as opposed to the lead, the crazy riffs, the solos, the fucking the wheedlies and deedlies. That's I think Amon Amarth is probably what got me into being more of a rhythm guitarist as opposed to a lead guitarist. And we'll get into that later. We're still talking about like bands and vocals. Another band that we came across eventually was Chelsea Grin. Early on, Chelsea Grin, their first EP, which I can't remember what it's called, but it's the EP that had the song Recreant and Krukabanger and Hit the Lights, It's Boner Time. I think that was Krukabanger. It was that album, and it hit me. The heaviness and the sounds that they were able to put out at the time, especially Recreant, with that real slow but real aggressive intro that they have. It's so good. And again, that pulls me into the whole rhythm part of things. I like being able to just do a rhythm, make it sound however I want, and it's great. I'm reading all my notes here, by the way. That's why I keep looking at my monitor. Alex Kohler, the first vocalist, that's who it was. At the time, his high vocals, his high screams, were insane. And I think they only improved over time, but at the time, that was probably the inspiration for me trying to learn how to do high screams, which I still can't do. I just don't think my voice or my throat is naturally suited to being able to do high vocals, because I've never really been able to pull them off. I do what I can, but it's not as good as it could be. But the combination of the highs and lows that they put out in their songs, it was really good. I really liked it. And like I said, I'm still trying to do it, but along the same notes of those highs and lows at the same time, we come to a band called the Crimson Armada, who I believe are not around anymore. The vocalist went into another band. I don't remember what the other band's called. I think it was something food related. But anyway, the Crimson Armada, Saud Ahmed, that's his name. His specialty were his high vocals, his high screams. And if you listen to any Crimson Armada song, his highs are just incredible. But the lows definitely left something to be desired. They weren't bad, but if you were used to low growls like Phil Bozeman, for example, it didn't hit the same. But what they were able to do is they would layer them. They would layer the high and the low vocals in some of their songs, and it would just hit hard. It was good. The music itself, too. I'm so bad at remembering names of songs. One of their songs I did a cover of a guitar cover of when I was a teenager a long time ago because it sounded incredibly technical on guitar, but it was like the same 5 frets or something like that. So it was like string skipping and just alternate picking. And it sounded so good and so hard to do, but once you learned how to do it, it wasn't. And that really got me too, because that kind of taught me like, oh, you can make your melodies, you can make your riffs sound really hard and sound really good, but it's not hard to pull off. And as a rhythm guitarist, that really struck me, because it's like, yeah, that means I can make sounds that I want to make without having to kill myself trying to be incredibly technical on a skill set that I don't actually have. And that hit me good. That was really good. They still chugged, obviously. They were technically death metal at the time. I mean, they were, obviously. I'm saying obviously a lot. Obviously. And yeah, I don't know. The Crimson Armada was definitely an inspiration when it came to actual song structure for me. However, that's all early on. So when we talk about more modern, more recent, my main inspirations for vocals and stuff, which is mostly Phil Bozeman. If you're seeing this, I will bear your babies. I will gladly birth them from my non-existent womb, Phil. I love you. A band called Enterprise Earth came around. I believe 2016 was their EP, I think. And I discovered Dan Watson. I technically knew about him beforehand because he was the vocalist for Infinite Annihilator's first album. But I did not know that at the time. I did not know him as a vocalist at the time. I just knew Infinite Annihilator was, stupid fast, stupid heavy, stupid crazy, and incredibly cool to listen to, but not an inspiration because I never wanted to be able to do what they did, aside from vocals, but I still had my inspirations outside of that, But when Enterprise Earth came around and Dan Watson started doing full songs in a not stupid style, a not, sadistic style, I guess, he was insane. I'd have to say Dan Watson, I want to say Dan Watson changed the vocal game at that time. Because of how good he was, his technical skill, his range, it was just astounding. I don't know how else to describe it. Him and Dan Watson and Phil Bozeman are my main inspirations for vocals at this point. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do what Dan Watson does because I lean more towards the gravelly, growly aspect from Phil Bozeman's early stuff, but I'd like to try because he's insane. And we're not going to talk about Infinite Annihilator, by the way, because I know all the controversy about them using machines and programming and not actually playing the music, blah, blah, blah. That's why we're not mentioning them. So now let's lean into instruments. So you can't see it. I've got 2 electric guitars. I've got my electric bass. I've got my main electric guitar, my Schecter Damien 7 Platinum, I believe is what it is. That's in its case in my closet. I have 2 acoustic guitars in the closet. No, I don't. I forgot. One of them's hanging up right now. I have another acoustic guitar in the closet. I have my ukulele. I have another electric bass. I like guitars. I like them a lot. I like all sorts of instruments. On top of all of that, I have my lyre harp. I have 2 ocarinas. I have an Irish penny whistle. I have a didgeridoo. I have an automaton. I have a kalimba, which has been in one of my songs. I have a stylophone. Sorry, stylophone. Also hanging up there, which is in a bag, is a handpan, which will be in songs, I hope. And right here, as you can see, is my drum set. I like instruments. I'm not necessarily good at all of them, but I like them. I can play them. It's pretty cool. Guitar was my main focus growing up. I never got as good as I wanted to be. I'm entirely self-taught. Everything I know about any sort of music is all self-taught. I've never taken any lessons. I've never taken any classes. I've never actually watched like tutorials or anything like that. If I wanted to learn something, I would watch the artist play it on YouTube, like a live recording, and I would try to mimic that. Oh, I also have a... I'm going to show this off, hang on. I also have a Chinese erhu, which I'm not going to play because it is very loud and it is currently 2 a.m. This is a pretty dang cool instrument, and unfortunately it's too tall to fit on my shelves over there, so I can't actually hang it up like I wanted to. So that's instruments. I like instruments. So for guitar, because guitar was my thing growing up, I mean, everybody in my generation, their initial guitar inspiration, their initial guitar inspiration was probably someone like Slash, who's mine when I was a kid. You had Slash, you had fucking Kirk Hammett, I think it is, from Metallica. You had Chris Broderick from Megadeth. You had the guy from Lamb of God, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. You had Yngwie Malmsteen, the artist formerly known as Prince, whom I believe went back to Prince after his lawsuits or whatever that was. The guy that his signature guitar has a handle in the body of the guitar, I can't remember his name. I'm bad with names, I'm sorry. All of those people, those were everybody's initial inspirations. I'm positive of that around my generation. Maybe not Yngwie Malmsteen, he's a little older than that, but still fucking legendary. My main inspiration for being able to do what I want to do on guitar was actually Chris Story of All Shall Perish. Side note, I saw something on Google that said All Shall Perish is doing a reunion. I'm looking forward to that. So Chris Story, if you've never seen him, at the time, he was fucking legendary. His ability to sweep and tap and alternate, and I think the coolest thing I've ever seen him do on guitar was his Never Again guitar solo in one take. I don't think he hit it perfectly like the recording, but Jesus Christ, being able to see him do the tapping into the sweeping down the neck and then back up. Oh, it's so cool, and I so wish I could do that. It's insane. But he absolutely 100% was my inspiration for learning how to do metal music. Because not only was he insane at guitar solos, but his rhythm sections as well. Like in Black Gold Rain. I can't make it by mouth. But Black Gold Rain, the rhythm section in Black Gold Rain is probably one of my favorite rhythm sections ever, including the solo. But specifically, Never Again's solo was just mind-blowing at the time. And then my best buddy, who was actually, we had a band in high school, and my best buddy was a lead guitarist because I wasn't good enough. My best buddy, he took huge inspiration from Chris Story and Rusty Cooley, who I believe was in one of All Shall Perish's song, From So Far Away, which is just one giant guitar solo, if I recall correctly. That was Rusty Cooley in there. And my best bud took so much inspiration from those two that he styled his way of playing guitar directly after them. He modeled himself after them. And in fact, I have an old clip from, easily 15 years ago of a guitar solo that my best bud, wrote on guitar that just reminds me so much of Chris Story. But the funny thing is, he's playing it. He got Rusty Cooley's signature guitar model, and that's what he's playing it on. So it's super clean and it's super nice. And I'll throw that in here for you guys to see. The video itself, I didn't edit the video. That's just what it is. So that was how we recorded video 20 years ago. 15? No, it was like 14, 13 years ago. Something like that. So I've never been a technical lead guitarist. I focus more on the rhythm. That's what I like. It's what I prefer. It's what I excel at. Now I have done covers with guitar solos. For example, I'm on a Martha again. That guitar solo, that's one that I've practiced for years because I love that song. And I've never actually been able to do it properly. I've always had to edit it and change it a little bit to fit how I can play guitar. So it's never going to match what the original sounds like, but it's my own style, and I don't mind that. But even then, when I did cover the song, I think it took me like a solid hour and a half to actually nail the solo in the recording. I'm not good. And to be honest, when it comes to guitar inspirations, that's really it. It was Slash that got me into guitar. Learning how to play Sweet Child of Mine. But from there, as I moved towards heavier and heavier music, I didn't really have a solid inspiration myself because, again, I wasn't a soloist. I wasn't a lead guitarist. So I would just take bits and pieces of what I've heard from other bands, other guitarists, and I wouldn't say try and copy them, but I would try and take what they could do and then put it into my own style. And I did discover what I'm really good at is I'm good at timing, and I'm good at I want to say I'm good at alternate picking, but not if I'm string skipping as well. I can alternate pick between like my low E and my A string. I can alternate pick between those easy peasy. It's natural to me. But if I were to go to E and B, oh god, E and G, no, I can't do that. Not very well, anyways, but I can. But what that leads into is Lamb of God. So I've done a Lamb of God cover, Laid to Rest. There's a lot of alternate picking in that song. There's not much string skipping, but it's a lot of alternate, especially the outro. It's a lot of alternate picking, and that's what I excel at. And Laid to Rest actually is the song. I play that song to warm up on guitar. I play it to warm up on drums, and I do the vocals to warm up my vocals. So Laid to Rest to me is just my perfect song because it incorporates your badass sounding guitar and drums into a hell of a melody, because you get your chug in there, and then you get your main riff, which is so good sounding. It's still technical to play if you don't know how to do it. I've been playing it for years. And it's what my fingers can just do it on command, and it's such a good warm-up for me. So I would have to say my style, my own personal style, when I do end up making original music instead of doing covers, I don't know when that's going to be. Don't ask. I'm bad at writing. But my own personal style incorporates a lot of what Lamb of God has done previously. That's what I naturally move towards. So that's really about all I've got for guitar. We can move on to drums now, because bass guitar isn't necessarily anything different from regular guitar. The only difference is finger picking, which I can do, but I prefer to use a pick on my bass anyways. It gives it a much meatier sound. So like if you pick a bass string instead of plucking it with your finger, you get that pick attack. You get the attack of the string, and it gives it a throatier sound, in my opinion. So most of my recordings are me picking my bass. It just sounds better, in my opinion. So for drums, I'm going to go back a second and re-mention I've always had a natural knack for timing. So I've always been okay with timing whatever, But what I've also been able to do is independent movement of my limbs. So when it comes to drumming, you don't want to move your hands and your feet all at the same time. I mean, sometimes you do, but for the most part, you're going to be doing alternate stuff, whatever. I don't know how to describe it. I've never been trained on drums. I don't know what the hell it's called. I just know how to do it. It's always been easy for me, I guess. The funniest shit I've ever seen. When I was in a band in high school, the lead guitarist in my band, he's fucking incredible on guitar, put him behind a drum set. He moves both his hands and both his feet at the same time. Every time. He cannot play individual notes. And it is so funny to watch him try and play drums. I'm sorry if you're seeing this, Noah, but goddamn, dude. you can't play drums. It's hilarious. But for the most part, I really only ever dabbled in drums. Until recently, I've never had a drum set of my own. When I was in a band in high school, my buddy, our drummer, kept his drums at my buddy's house. So whenever I went over there, I would just play around on the drums and see what I could do. And it was always fun. I always loved doing it. And then that was back when I was in high school, however long ago that was. And then after that point, I didn't touch drums for like 6 or 7 years until I moved about 45 minutes away from my parents, and I moved into a house with a bunch of roommates, and one of them bought an electronic drum set. Not this one. He bought a pretty bad one, but it was like a $150 electronic drum set. It worked. You know, it wasn't the best, but it worked. And I played that fucker so much that I got yelled at by our roommates because they didn't want to hear me playing it all day, every day. But when I started learning drums on that's when I started to get more into drums. And specifically, I've never had a drum inspiration because for the most part, and most of the songs I was listening to, it was either a machine or they were all fairly generic sounding at the time. It was just fast, you know. But one in particular, Death Clock, Go Into the Water. I believe it was called Go Into the Water, yeah. I know he programs, Brandon I think his name was. He did the guitar and bass and vocals, but I believe he programmed his drums. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but that's what I recall hearing. But Go Into the Water, the drums for that song, that's what really got me into drums. I don't know how to describe it, but I loved the whatever you want to call it. It's so fun to play, and it teaches you, because you're doing two different cymbals with one hand. You're doing your snare on a different timing, and then your feet aren't following a set pattern. I mean, it is over the course of a whole bar, but for each, like, your feet aren't following a set beat, I guess I should say. It's so fun to play. It's a good warm-up song. And that's really what got me into drums, was that song in particular, actually. And then from there, along the lines, I discovered a band called Gojira, which is easily one of my favorite bands of all time. They are so good. But I'm not going to get into them. The only thing I'm going to mention from them is Mario Duplantier, their drummer, who is easily the most talented, the most skilled, the most badass drummer I have ever seen. If you haven't seen what he can do, especially for extended periods of time, go watch him. Go watch some of his solos. Go watch him play live and see how long he can keep up doing what he does. It's incredible. He can play he plays 4 different BPMs with each limb. So both of his hands are going different. I don't even know how to describe it. Go listen to Into the Storm. It's, oh my God, just go watch it, dude. He is so insane, and I love Mario. But he's 100% my inspiration to date. Now, I highly doubt I will ever get to his level. It's not going to happen. But I'm going to try, because he's insane, and I love him. So really, that basically wraps up all of my favorite bands, all of my inspirations. That it kind of leads us into where we are today. And then eventually along the line, I did discover the video game cover artists on YouTube. So like, you got your Family Jewels, your Rashad EB, your Toxic Eternity, your Longest Solo Ever, your Little V, plenty more. For me specifically, it was Family Jewels that got me into thinking, hey, I can do that. I have everything I need. I'm going to try this. I'm going to do it. And here we are. Now, I don't focus primarily on video game songs. I do video game songs, but I also branch out into regular just songs. A la Little V, who does that too. He does both He does both video game songs. He does cover songs of funny songs, sometimes serious songs, anime songs, which Jonathan Young, by the way, Jonathan Young is like my singing inspiration. I would love to be able to sing like Jonathan Young does. Jonathan Young, if you're listening, I would love to talk to you. But it was really all of that, listening to all of those guys and seeing what they're able to do, that got me into doing what I'm currently doing, the music thing. Now, I don't want to call anybody out. I don't want to start any arguments, but I think a big difference between myself and some of them are I actually play my drums. Don't hate me. I'm sorry. But I play my drums. I know the rest of you, a lot of you guys don't. I do.